Are you feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about how to scale your business sustainably? Do you have big dreams for your business, but you're struggling to turn them into reality? Or maybe you're just tired of sacrificing your health, your well-being, time with your family, and your own self-care all in the pursuit of success. Not only is this not sustainable, but it can lead to increased stress and decreased productivity in the long run. Don't let the chaos of running a business hold you back any longer. Join our 12-month Real Women, Real Business Mastery program and start building the business of your dream with clarity and confidence. If you're ready to achieve six-figure plus revenue growth, rediscover your passion for your business, and say goodbye to overwork, then let's chat. Book a free business planning session at aboutshaunaLynn.com/plan. Check out the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Business Podcast. I am your host, Shauna Lynn Simon, and today I am being joined by Donna Dube. She is a certified director of operations, and she actually hosts her own podcast that you'll want to check out called the CEO Amplify Podcast. And she works with business owners to help them to go from that solopreneur to CEO. And of course, speaking my language here, doing it all without sacrificing your life, your health, and your relationships. So I think we're going to have a great conversation here today. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you. So happy to be here, Shauna Lynn.
Amazing. I'm really excited to get into this because, we did a little bit of chatting pre-show, and I think that we have some very similar alignment in terms of our thoughts, our processes, and our ideas. And you've talked about you're kind of all about the CEO hacks for small business success, how to get them kind of onto the right track. Tell me a little bit about the way that you work with your clients to get them sort of out of that chaos and into that nice streamlined, what we all want, right? Is that nice, smooth sailing. That's what entrepreneurship is supposed to be about, right? It's just smooth sailing.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We have, those days here and there where it is. But so in all honesty, it really starts with a mindset shift, because so many solopreneurs and small business owners I speak to don't actually think of themselves as CEO.
Oh, so true.
And if we think about, what is the definition of CEO? It's not chief everything officer, right? But it is the person who's responsible for the vision and the strategy. Absolutely. Where is this business going in the next year, in the next 3 years, right? How do I want to show up? How do I want this business to show up? And so there's no one else on your team, if you have a team, who can do that. You are responsible for that. Whether you're a solopreneur and you started last week, or you've been in business for 5 years, or you have a team of 20, that's still your responsibility. And so really putting that hat on and believing that, yes, I am the CEO of my business. No matter the amount of revenue I'm bringing in right now, I don't have to look like Microsoft and Nike and, the big gurus, right? But I do have to have a strategy. I do have to have a vision, and I need to know where I'm going. And so,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Really being clear on that from the get-go makes a world of difference to start with.
And you're so right. And I mean, you're saying, being clear about it from the get-go. And the reality is, though, that so many entrepreneurs, you're not sure where you're going from the start. You might have a bit of an idea. And I find, what I tend to work with, I've called them very affectionately throughout this podcast, my accidental CEOs. These are those passion-driven entrepreneurs who have this idea of I am going to solve this problem in the world. I am going to fulfill this gap in the market. And that's what they set out to do. They want to be the doer. They want to do whatever it is that they do. And the kind of backseat to that is but I'm also operating this business. And then as things begin to grow and evolve, it can be almost like a bit of a runaway train where they're oh, wait a minute, I've got to actually figure some things out here. Mm-hmm. And, having that clear strategy and vision is not something that many people, in my experience, start off doing. It's not common with passion-driven CEOs anyway. I don't know if that's sort of the same thing that you have found, but yeah. So when they're coming to you, they're basically in a bit of chaos and saying okay, I've got a bit of a mess on my hands here. And I'm saying this again, very affectionately, of course, but, I've got a bit of a mess on my hands here in that I don't really know what it is that I want to do. And if I'm correct here, they're probably also saying, well, someone told me I should do this. And then I had this other person who told me I should do this. And then I was also kind of thinking like, this is sort of related to what I'm doing and maybe I should do that. So how do you get them started down the path of like clarifying what their vision, their strategy is?
Yes, yes. And it's so true that there's a lot of noise in this online world we live in, right? And so trying to sort out what's going to work for me and what's going to work for my target audience. It's a bit of trial and error, no doubt. You're not going to nail it the first time.
Sure.
But I think a few things come really important here when we're looking at what's our vision, what's our strategy. And so first off, looking at the time that you have to devote to this business, right? The stage of life that you're in. I have some clients who are what I like to call mompreneurs. They've got 2 young children at home trying to run a business, right? The amount of time that they can devote to that business is going to be different than, a person who doesn't have any kids or has teenagers or young adults who have grown. And yeah, you're still a mom, but nowhere near the same responsibility, right?
Sure.
Or you've got aging parents. And so part of your week is to help them in what they need. So really taking a step back and saying, how much time can I realistically devote to this? Because giving up our life to start a business doesn't work. Nope. I tried it. I'm here to tell you it doesn't work, right? And I have
the burnout scars to prove it. Yeah.
Right. Yes, right. And so really looking at our life and saying, okay, this is where I am right now. What can I devote to the business? And then how can I, make an offer that fits the lifestyle that I want and the time that I have, right? And so if you have limited time, you want to look at simplifying what you have, right? Maybe it's one signature offer that you're selling, 3-4 times a year consistently to get people into your program, not 6 offers that, you're trying to market all at the same time.
And I think that's such a huge thing that you're saying, is streamlining your offerings. I think that, we do want to try to be able to fulfill all the gaps. Like, oh, well, there's a need over here and there's a need over there. And this person said I should do this. And when you can really focus in on what it is that you do and you do well, nail that down before even trying to add anything else to it, it's way less overwhelming. But of course, it is also easier said than done. To your point, I mean, they've got, we're navigating so many different challenges and demands that are being put on us. And as women, we are statistically known for having a difficult time saying no to pretty much anything. So what are some suggestions that you would give to help them to kind of put those boundaries? Because like you said, I mean, in theory, sure, they understand. I understand I've got to only work, I've only got so many hours in a day to work. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to put the kids to bed and try to get on the computer for another couple of hours because I think that's what I need to do. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to wake up 3 hours earlier the next day. So what are some tips that you would give to help them to be able to identify and put those boundaries in place?
Yes, good question. So I like to institute what's called my scheduling ninja. Ooh. And so you can have this ninja working for you or against you. Most of us as entrepreneurs have it working against us to begin with. So we have to flip that around. And really what this is our ideal calendar. So you take a blank calendar and you say, okay, where are my commitments for my personal life?
Right.
Well, I like to have my quiet time in the morning. Block it off. I like to have a date night every Thursday night. Block it off. I visit Aunt Susie on Tuesday, whatever it is, right? Block off those personal commitments first and foremost. Then with the time you have left, decide when you're going to be, air quotes now, open.
Right.
Well, wait a second. I'm running an online business. I'm always open. Yes, people can buy from you possibly all the time, but there's going to be a set core hours when you are at your laptop and you're available.
Sure.
The reason you want to set this time is to help you divide that family time from work time, right? So when you have those set hours and then you try and put the main activities that you need to do within those set hours, that doesn't mean you can't go to your laptop later if nothing's going on and you choose to, but you shouldn't have to. You've got your main set hours. If you have anyone working with you, they know, okay, I can reach Shauna Lynn between this time and this time, right?
Yes.
And then once you've got those open hours, then you want to put in what are the major priorities that I, as business owner, have to do each and every week.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying though, too, about the choice versus have to. I don't know if you've ever read the book Triggers. The name of the person, I want to say it's Marshall Goldstein.
Okay. I
it's kind of
haven't
escaping
read
me.
it, but yes.
Fantastic book. And one of the things that he talks about in that book is just about rephrasing the things that we get to do. Like everything is a choice for us. So we should actually remove the I have to phrase from our vocabulary. Essentially, it's more of an I get to do this. So like, it's not I have to take the kids to soccer practice. It's I am taking the kids to soccer practice, or I get to take the kids to soccer practice, because it is a choice. You can also delegate that out if you need to. You know, I mean, everything that we do is a choice, whether it's caring for your parents, caring for your kids, caring for your business, whatever it looks like. So I really like that you kind of already rephrase that of like, what is it that I choose to do versus, so yeah, if you want to work on a weekend or an evening or whatever, that's great because you've made the choice to do that. So now when it comes to identifying those priority items, those high level tasks that the CEO should be doing, I think this is where so many people get stuck. And I know I've spoken in previous episodes about it, but we cannot say this enough times or in enough different ways. So I'd love to get your take on like, how do they go about figuring out which things to work on? Because I think that's the biggest thing that people are always saying to me, like, there's just so much. I don't even know where to start. I don't know which to do. And, and all the mundane tasks end up clouding up the calendar. And then they're like, well, I'll work on these big things that I know I'm supposed to do when I have time. Again, air quotes.
Yes. Right.
So what are your best suggestions for helping them to do that priority?
Yeah, thank you. So I like to approach my to-do list from a strategic perspective.
Okay.
And so what I teach my clients is the same as what I do, which is you've got a mile-long to-do list. You could cherry pick the things you like to do, right? And so listen, I've been there, I've done it. Yeah. Or you could say, no, I'm starting at the top and I'll work my way down with whatever time I have.
Right.
But neither of those two are being really strategic. And as business owner, you have to use your time with intention and purpose. And so I like to think of all the tasks that you can have on your to-do list. They can fit into two buckets. Yep, only two: maintenance and growth.
Okay.
So maintenance tasks are things like, I want to, change that email sequence, tweak email number 5 a little bit, invoicing, bookkeeping, social media graphics, reaching out to a client for something that you have to follow up on.
Sure.
Growth tasks are where you actually move the needle forward in your business. So growth tasks are things like your partnerships, podcasting, podcast guesting, creating brand new content for your course, or creating a new service or offering.
Right.
Getting in front of other people's audiences and sharing your wisdom and your value. Those are things that you can't delegate, right? Take this podcast for an example. It's Shauna Lynn's podcast. Luckily, she invited me to be a guest, right? I'm happy to do so. She can't have her team member show up here instead of her, right? It has to be her. She has to prepare ahead of time, know what we're talking about, know something about our guest, etc. Sure. However, behind the scenes, she could delegate editing. She could delegate getting social media, letting the guests know things are ready, yada, yada, right? Oh, we don't have your headshot. We don't have your bio, whatever that looks like.
Right.
So as you think about each process in your business, what parts do you as business owner have to do? And what parts can you delegate to someone else, or can you automate? Because when we think about automating, it's really just delegating to a machine.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And there's so much that can be automated too. I think that we underestimate how much can be automated, like just very simple things that like, oh, and that's off my plate now, especially with AI nowadays. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we have growth and maintenance. And as business leader, you want to make sure that you are spending a good majority of your week doing those growth level tasks, right? So once you know what kind of tasks are in there, then we use a simple system called the CEO score, which really just looks at a number that I need to reach to make sure I've done enough growth level tasks each week, right? So have I done some networking? Have I done some partnership? Have I reached out to get in front of someone else's audience, right? Did I spend some time creating that new content for my members? whatever those pieces look like. But
Yeah.
during that open time when you have on your calendar, you want to make sure that you block off time for doing those growth level tasks.
And yeah, you just answered my question that I was going to ask, which was going to be, how do you know how much time how much is enough time? So there's an actual scoring system that you use to identify that.
So
I
the
love
scoring
that.
system will make sense because the scoring system is based on the revenue goal that you want to reach.
Okay.
Right. So the
Perfect.
higher revenue goal, the more time you need to spend on growth level tasks. And if you think about a small business versus a very large business, that's exactly what happens, right? They have a very large revenue goal and the CEO is not doing any maintenance tasks.
Right. Yes. In the perfect world, none of us CEOs are doing the maintenance tasks, but the reality is that, invoicing needs to get done. And sometimes that's not outsourced to people, it's, and I think that's another key thing too, is, everyone's always saying to me, well, how do I know what to outsource? And, this person said I should outsource social media. This person said I should outsource bookkeeping. This person said I should outsource, my podcast production stuff, whatever it looks like. I think it really depends on the business, what your goals are. Exactly what you're saying. It's, it really depends on you, where your strengths are, where you're feeling that time suck is coming from, and what makes the most sense. For myself personally, I absolutely despise accounting. And my dad was an accountant. I worked in accounting for a couple of summers during co-oping back in my university days. There, at no point have I ever been like, oh, yeah, I love this. And I love numbers. I'm a math person. I actually have an analyst degree. So whole different ball game though, dealing with accounting. I despise accounting. Anytime my accountant wants to have a conversation, I gloss over. I don't care. So it was the first thing that I delegated out. Doesn't mean that I'm completely hands off, because obviously I still need to keep track of the numbers in my business, but that was sort of a no-brainer for me. But for other people, they might feel like, you know what? It depends on the type of business that you're in. Maybe bookkeeping is not that much work. Yeah. I was running a home stage and interior design business. The amount of money that was constantly flowing in and out was just obscene. We're constantly buying things and then billing clients for them. It's a lot of back and forth. Most average businesses, especially if you just got online payments coming through, it's fairly easy to just connect that to your QuickBooks and you barely need a bookkeeper to do a whole heck of a lot, right? So it really depends on how brick and mortar you are versus how online, what the intricate details are of it. So as I'm saying, in my business, it made sense to delegate bookkeeping. In your business, it might make more sense to do something else. And I think that's another thing is that, and that's where, a consultant like yourself can come in and also help to identify where are we trying to pull back here? What's the low hanging fruit that we can offer to someone else? Yeah.
And I like that you brought that up, Shawn-Lyn, because it's true. You have to look at yourself too and say, okay, this task is 5 hours a week I'm spending on it and I'm frustrated and I don't want to do it and I keep procrastinating it. Well, that's red flags right there. That should be one of the first things you delegate, right? And that could be different than the next person. And so really looking internally and saying, where am I spending that time week after week? If it's a one-off task, no worry. But if it's repetitive, that's where we want to be.
Exactly. And I like how you just really hit the nail on the head though. It's not just that I don't enjoy bookkeeping. It's that it becomes that task that weighs on me because I'm going to procrastinate on it. It's going to take me probably twice as long as it should take because I'm going to get into it a little bit and then I'm going to get bored and I'm going to get distracted and I'm going to try to go do something else. And, it's not worth it. So this task that maybe should have only taken 3 hours does take about 6 hours to actually complete. So it's draining. I think we underestimate the impact that has on our business. So getting rid of the ones that first and foremost you just don't enjoy, and the ones that are the time suck, and frankly the ones you're not very good at too. And this is the other thing too. Can we talk about that for a moment? How often do you find your clients are saying that they have to do everything? They're the only one who can do all these things. Yeah. So how do you help them navigating that too? But I'm really good at this. I'm the best at sales. I'm the best at offering the services. How do you help them to give some of those things up?
Yes. So again, it depends on the client. A lot of times it comes down to objective data. And so we'll look at, I'm the best at doing X. Okay, how much time does X take you? And what's your hourly rate? Right. And when we multiply those out, we see how much that's actually costing the business for you to do that versus delegating it to someone else and pay them at a much lower rate, right? Oh,
Right.
but they won't do it as well. They will if we set them up for success.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we have examples for them? Do we clearly explain, what it is we want them to do? Is there a clear expected outcome so they know, oh, if I get it like this, that's what she's looking for.
Right.
And then do we believe that, if it's 75 or 80% of the way I did it, we're good.
Yeah. And you know what, in my experience, I've also found though that when you allow someone the freedom to make it their own. So yes, set them up for success, show them how you want to do it, but give them the opportunity to continue to improve on that. They're going to identify tools that maybe allows them to be able to do things in half the time. So now you're paying them even less than you thought you were going to be paying them. Or maybe they know some other cool tricks to the system, or maybe like social media is a great example. I don't believe that anyone is perfect at social media. Does someone on the outside know your business as well as you do? No, but there are ways around that. So you're providing the content, but they're the ones who are actually like creating the actual graphics for it and actually getting these things posted and doing all that stuff. You don't need to be doing all the things. So sure, you can control the narrative to an extent, but it doesn't mean that you have to be a part of all of it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think just taking that step back again, putting on that CEO hat and saying, okay, this process in my business, what do I have to do? And what can I automate? What can I delegate? And then a big piece of it is really, what can I stop?
Yes.
Stop. I said, what can I stop? Yes, I did. Because as business owners, we start a strategy. It's rolling. We think, oh, that's okay. Then we hear or we think of another strategy. We add that one in. We add another one in. And we haven't taken the time to actually measure, is it working?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Take a step back, actually measure, look at the data. Because if that thing is taking you a few hours a week and it's not bringing you the actions that you want out of it, right? People aren't clicking, they aren't signing up, they're not whatever the CTA was that you put there, then why continue it? You want to be putting your time into things that you know are giving you that return on investment.
Yeah. And I think that is key as well. And a lot of people look at training someone else as too big of an investment of time, but the value that you get out of it should outweigh the investment that it takes to be able to train them. And I also think that we put way too much, we overanalyze, we overestimate what it takes to train someone. If you've been doing this process day after day, week after week, month after month, whatever, the next time you do it, just record yourself doing it and then send that off to them. It's incredibly easy. Like, sure, there's going to be some questions, there's going to be some back and forth, but ultimately it will save time after the first time they do it. If it's a one-off task, there's no point in delegating it most of the time. Yes. Because that would take you just as much time just to do it yourself. But if it's a repetitive task, those will always pay for themselves in the end by being able to hand them off to someone else and let them help you to document the SOPs for it. You don't have to have it all in place.
100%. Yeah. And I hear that sometimes, there's kind of two sides to the coin. We have one person who's like, I needed to hire yesterday, throw up a social media post and they're looking for help. Right. And in those cases, they usually get what they're asking for. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not the quality that they're looking for. The other side of the coin is I have to have everything documented before I can bring anyone in. And I think there's a happy medium that we really need to focus on, right? And like you
totally
say,
agreed. Yes.
Making a quick Loom video of how I did this, jotting down some notes, and then having them write up the SOP because they're the expert at doing that thing. That's what you hired them for. And so they might come up with a better way of doing it that you hadn't even thought of because you're just in the groove. You just keep repeating it. Same, right?
Sure. Yeah. The biggest advice that I often give for that, I used to, all through university and starting my business, I bartended. A great way to kind of supplement your cash as needed. And I became the person who always trained any of the new staff. And I would say the same thing to every new staff member that came in. I'm going to treat you as though you know nothing coming in here because I want to ensure that I don't miss anything. However, it doesn't mean that I'm not open to changing things either. I want you to just learn how we do things first, ask all the questions you need to understand why we do it a certain way, and I'm happy to answer them. Once you've been working here for a few weeks, if you see opportunities for improving, by all means. And I think if you set those expectations, because this is sometimes a frustration I see from some of my clients as well, like, well, I delegated it off and the first thing they want to do is they want to change these 6 different things. That's fine. Like, I get it. It's frustrating because they want to show you that they're bringing extra value. And at the same time, you're like, I just want them to do it how I want them to do it. So I generally say, like, just give them that expectation. Say, can you just do it my way initially? Learn my way and you'll understand what it is that I like. And then if you can improve on this, then we move to that step. But of course, if you are someone where you're like, I already know I'm doing a terrible job at this, then tell them to improve on it from day one, whatever works for you. But I think that, yeah, we have to kind of figure out what that happy medium is to be able to pass things off and how much do we need to control. And I mean, I have a lot of clients that are like, I'm a control freak. I'm like, yeah, control freaks do not scale businesses. Leaders do, right? So, yeah. And you also talk about, so going back to the sort of time management, I'm all about time management. I mean, I love the different time management hacks and such. And so you talk about a power hour. Tell me a little bit about what this power hour looks like. What exactly, how can someone capitalize on this and what is it? And you've actually got something that people can go and download. I'll put it in the show notes, but why don't you explain a little bit about what that is? Yeah,
for sure. So this idea of the power hour, I mean, you've heard probably people say, oh, have a CEO time, right? Book an afternoon, go somewhere offsite and have your CEO time. And to be honest with you, in my own business, I tried implementing that, but I wasn't successful at doing it regularly enough. And then it became more work about where am I going to go and then making sure I have a whole afternoon or a day cleared off and so it became more of a hassle really than the idea was great, but I wasn't implementing it well. And so I decided to switch this up based on a quote by Brian Tracy, which said, if you spend 1 hour planning, you save 10 hours in implementation. And I was like,
true.
Okay, hold on a second. 1 hour. I can do 1 hour. And so that's exactly what it is. It's a dedicated 1 hour in your calendar. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. What does matter, it's the same time and day every week because we're building a habit, right?
I love that. So that's the key, is making it the same hour.
Yes. So whether that's a Monday morning, a Sunday night, a Friday afternoon, whatever works with your schedule, but it's the same time and it's non-negotiable.
Okay.
Nothing else trumps it. Okay. A life crisis trumps it, but
sure. Actual emergencies, not made up emergencies. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so then you say, okay, but what do I do during this 1 hour? Right. And there's 3 main things you want to do. You want to review, reflect, and prioritize. So when I say review, you're reviewing where your business is right now in this month. So you set goals in January, maybe you're reviewing them in June, if you're lucky, right? No, I want you to be reviewing each and every week.
Okay.
So what will we review? Well, you want to look at your top metrics. So how am I getting new people into my world? Because if you're not getting new people to learn about you, then eventually your pipeline is drying up. Right?
Absolutely.
So how am I getting new people in? Is my strategy right now working? So whether that's through a lead magnet, whether that's through podcasting, guesting, whatever that looks like, but how am I getting new people into my world? And can I count that is still working? That strategy is working. And then of course you want to review your revenue. So you want to do this each and every week, not so that you can feel down in the dumps if your revenue isn't where you want it to be, but so that you have time to take action. Right. So let's say we're in the middle of July, you look at your revenue and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit behind. Okay. What now can you do? Let's be strategic. Can you reach out to some people? Can you do a flash sale? Can you do this, that? What is it that you can put into place to change that by the end of the month? Right. We want to catch that snowball when it's small. We don't want to let it keep growing and growing and growing until it's so big that now we have a real problem on our hands.
And this is gold. For anyone who's listening, I don't know if you're really fully getting just how valuable this is, because you're absolutely right. It's amazing how many business owners look up one day and say, oh, shoot, I didn't hit my targets 2 months ago, and now I'm paying for it. If you're on top of that, looking at, and your goals don't always necessarily have to be something financial, but maybe it's just a project that you wanted to take on or a new service you wanted to implement. But it's amazing how quickly it can get away from us if we're not taking that time to reflect. The other thing I also wanted to say, for anyone who is not familiar, Brian Tracy is the author of the book, Eat That Frog. Fantastic book. I will put a link to it in the show notes as well, because I'm an avid reader, as you can probably tell. But when you mention a name or a quote, I can usually tell you the book that it came from, because my Audible library is ridiculously large. I'm working on organizing it. But yeah, I'll definitely be sure to add a link to that, because it's a fantastic book. I think that we are all guilty of procrastination, but there's some really valuable tips in there for helping. And everything that you've provided today as well also helps with people being able to move forward. I think that's the key, is that when you get so stuck in the chaos, you're not moving forward. You're doing all you can do to just keep your head above water every day. It's not sustainable.
Yes. Yes.
So it'll work. And, I have one client, she says, well, I always manage to get everything done. I'm like, yeah, no, I know, but at what cost? Like that's the catch. Like, it always gets done. I make sure it always gets done. Sure. But at what cost? If we could be doing this with a little less stress on our plate, with a little more organization and a little more prioritizing ourselves, our mental, our physical well-being, I mean, imagine how much further you can be along, because you have more capacity to make better decisions if you don't feel so stressed and overwhelmed all the time.
Yes, 100%. And you're right about the fact that the goal doesn't have to be a revenue goal. I remember working with a client, and one of her goals was to get on so many podcast episodes to guest a year, right? So that many for a year. How many do we need to do a month? But then she forgot to take it a step further and say, okay, that means I have to pitch to how many more. So we're a couple
to get the certain number of yeses. Yeah.
I'm saying, so how's your podcast guesting goal? Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't, we're not where we are. So then when we dig in a little bit further, okay, we're not where we are because we didn't reach out enough, right? Let's get a system, let's get a process in place so that we are reaching out to enough people so that we can get the end result.
Right. Absolutely. And going back to that as well, it also, that's a great example of something that doesn't have to be you necessarily either. Like maybe that's something you're delegating is, okay, well, I'm not getting to the pitching. Is this something that I can delegate to someone else? Even if it's just a matter of, can someone else just do the research to find which podcasts I want to pitch? And then I do the actual pitches, or, because it does take time. Is that the way that her time should be spent? I mean, I don't know this client, of course, maybe it is the best way to spend her time. I don't know, but more than likely her time is better spent actually being on the podcast and, putting together the content for these podcast interviews. So I think that, a lot of times we can have just sort of this narrow focus as to all that we need to do. And there's a lot more that can be delegated. And even if it's just a few hours a week, there are tons of resources out there. You don't necessarily have to have that full-time employee in order to do it. Trust me.
So true. Yeah. And it's amazing what a couple hours a week will do. Like, let's say you hire someone even for 3 hours a week. If you're intentional, you now have 3 hours a week to put towards working on your business, to put towards those growth level tasks, right? That gets you way farther ahead. You don't need 40 hours.
And I think that's also key as well. It's similar to the idea of if you're a smoker and you quit smoking, for example, you take that $20 you would have spent every other day on your cigarettes and you put it into a savings account. You should be doing the same thing as you are offloading your tasks, if you can be strategic about it. But keep in mind, if you're working 70 hours a week, you don't need to rebook 3 hours you just offloaded. You take those 3 hours to do something more self-care related, spend time with family and friends. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to rebook it business-wise, but anytime you find yourself saving 3 hours here or an hour there, how would you like to repurpose that time? And I think being purposeful about it, whether it's for business or pleasure, be purposeful about it. And I think this is the one thing that as entrepreneurs, we don't really have. I mean, we get into entrepreneurship. A lot of people anyway, are like, I want to have all the freedom to do all the things that I want to do. And you do. This is the thing, you absolutely do. But there still needs to be a little bit of a strategy as to how you're going to spend your time, because it's really easy for that calendar to just kind of get completely out of your control. So being a bit more purposeful about how you're going to spend your personal time as well as your business time is so key to all of that.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And then the last piece of that power hour is then to prioritize. What tasks do I need to do this week to get me closer to those goals? So those goals are always staying with us. We take the 12-month of breaking them down into monthly, but they're staying with us. What's the next step I need to do, right? It's not that I'm going to complete this huge, big thing this week, because I'm not. Right. Nope. Break it down into bite-sized pieces. This week, I need to do this. And then putting it on our calendars. Because if you're anything like me, if it's not on the calendar, it's probably not happening.
Nope. It's like going grocery shopping without your grocery list. You're coming out empty-handed. Yes. Or the whole lot of things you didn't need.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So getting that on the calendar, now you have that dedicated time to do that priority that you need this week.
That's fantastic. I really love this. And where can they find the Power Hour?
Oh, yes. It's on my website, which is ceoamplify.ca and then /power hour.
Perfect. We will be sure to put that into the show notes as well. But I would encourage anyone that is listening to go and grab this free download. It's the CEO Power Hour Playbook. So I think this is a huge thing to be able to have that strategy behind how you're going to implement the Power Hour into your week. I'm going to take a look at it myself. I think I need this as well. And as much as I feel like I'm pretty good at time management, I will admit that I haven't strategically put 1 hour aside each week to really do exactly that. And I really, really like that. Like I do a fair bit of planning. I've got my systems, but I'm like, I'm going to see what I can do about implementing this as well. This is great. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, if you could sum up sort of one highlight from our conversation today to say, if you do nothing else, if you got nothing else out of this episode, this is the one thing to take away. What would that takeaway be for you?
I think I would have to share a quote by one of my favorite authors, James Clear. Atomic Habits. Another really good book.
Another great one. Yes. I have quoted that on previous episodes as well.
Because there's so many golden nuggets that I didn't pick up the first time through. Right. But he has a quote that says, people think there isn't enough time. And that's a myth. There's enough time. It's how we focus the time that we have. And so I think that would kind of summarize what we've been talking about today.
Perfect. Yeah. For anyone who hasn't read Atomic Habits by James Clear, I will put the link in the show notes. I'm also going to put a link in the notes for The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is sort of a predecessor to James Clear's book. He actually does say that he plays off of that. So if you haven't read The Power of Habit, read that one first and then check out James Clear's book. Donna, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I honestly cannot thank you enough for joining me. And for all of you listening right now, if what we're saying here is resonating with you today, I really, really, really hope that you will continue to listen, allow us to be a part of your journey. Be sure to leave us a review, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. But also, if you are enjoying this, share it with a friend, share it with a colleague, share with another female entrepreneur that you know can benefit from this, because that is the best way that we can help each other out and empower each other. All right. Well, thank you again, Donna, so much for being here. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. I enjoyed as well.
Wonderful. Until next time, everyone, keep thriving.